It was one of the best looking Volkswagens of all time. It's the OG GTI. It's one of the most underrated front-wheel drive cars of all time. I'm talking about the Scirocco, baby.
Absolutely not.
The Volkswagen Type 14, aka the Karmann Ghia, was a two-door coupe built from 1955 to 1974, which is an insanely long time not to make any changes to a vehicle. And as the name suggests, it was styled by the Italian design firm Ghia, who made normal cars, some of the most beautiful ever made, like the Fiat 8V and the Chrysler turbine cars. And the Karmann Ghia was immensely successful, but like its brother, the Beetle, by the 1970s it was showing its age and desperately in need of a replacement. Volkswagen, being the practical guys that they are, decided to build the Beetle replacement, aka the Golf, at the same time with the same platform as the Karmann Ghia replacement. Resourcefulness is what I like. Therefore, they would have a great hatchback and a great coupe while saving a bunch of money. So in 1973, the Scirocco was launched, and less than a year later it went on sale. And it was a sales sensation, let me tell you, with over 500,000 produced in 7 years. Just like any other great Volkswagen, it was practical and it got good gas mileage, but unlike every other great Volkswagen, it had an Ital-designed body on it that was a lot more sporty than the boxes like the first-gen Golf. I love the first-gen Golf, but it's a bit of a box. It's a great box, but it's a box. This thing was sleek. It was angular, but in sort of a streamlined sort of way thanks to that coupe styling. It was very sporty, but there had to be something to back up that sporty styling, and I'll tell you, its base 1 liter 47 horsepower inline-4 wasn't it. So in 1976, Volkswagen unveiled a sports variant called the Grand Touring Injection. Yes, the first GTI wasn't the Golf, it was the Scirocco. The Scirocco GTI actually released a few months earlier than the Golf GTI, and like its brother, it had front and rear anti-roll bars, disc brakes, larger tires, sweet red grille highlights, a rear wing, and a fuel-injected 1.6-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder making 110 horsepower. Oh, that's not a lot, you say, but this is a front-wheel drive coupe from the 70s that weighs under 1,700 pounds. For reference, that is a mind-blowing number because it's 400 pounds less than the NA Miata. Have you seen an NA Miata? Chances are you have. They're little. The first-gen Scirocco then, especially the GTI, was an icon and a perfect launching point for the next great Volkswagen coupe. Was the second gen that perfect coupe? I'm not so sure. It wasn't designed by Giugiaro, but it still looked good, even if the proportions were scaled up for more interior room. So the styling wasn't the problem with the bigger vehicle. No, it was the weight. It was now 2,200 pounds, the same weight as an NA Miata. But in fairness, it did get a bump in power up to 136 horsepower thanks to its 16-valve variant, and that gave it a respectable top speed of 131 miles an hour. But to be honest, even with a lot more power, adding 400 pounds to the curb weight takes its toll. And the 1,700-pound go-karts of the first gen simply couldn't be replicated in the same spirit as the heavier second gen, and the sales began to slump. Granted, it didn't help that in 1988, Volkswagen released another front-wheel drive coupe to their lineup. Still, by 1992 they had sold just 250,000 cars over 11 years, which, reminder, the first gen sold 500,000 cars in 7 years, so the Scirocco was killed off. Remember that second front-wheel drive coupe they launched in 1988 that sort of stole some sales from the second-gen Scirocco? Yeah, it was called the Corrado, and I know it's not even based off of the Scirocco, but it's essentially an upmarket version, and I want to talk about it, so we're going to talk about it. Turns out, it was the most expensive Volkswagen car up to that point, and being Volkswagen's most expensive model gives you some perks. First of all, the windows are flush with the bodywork to reduce drag and streamline the styling. Then, the naturally aspirated 4 cylinders old were thrown out in favor of a supercharged version, or even better, the legendary VR6. The ultra-narrow V-angle made the VR6 compact and efficient, while also delivering a lot of horsepower. I say that relative to a front-wheel drive hatchback, considering the Corrado had 188 horsepower and 181 foot-pounds of torque. But most importantly for the Corrado, and arguably the least well-known, is its aerodynamics. The Corrado featured one of the first ever active rear wings on a road car. Yeah, I know the Lancia Thema 8.32 was the first by about 4 years, but this wasn't the first one on American soil. And when it was all said and done, the Corrado was regarded as one of the best handling Volkswagens of the 20th century, and is still regarded as one of the best looking ever made by the company. It's an icon that nobody bought. Just under 100,000 were shipped worldwide, and it too died in 1995. But then, in 2008, during the depths of the Great Recession, something came back. The Scirocco. Once again, it was based off the Golf, and it was essentially just a normal Golf with a much sleeker body on it. That meant it was very good, because the Golf is very good, and this one looks a lot better than the Golf. But that also meant it was pretty useless, because allow me to do a survey of Volkswagen's hatchback lineup in 2009, shall we? They had the Golf, which is an icon that everybody knows, and was doing fantastic even during the recession. They had the Polo, which was dominating the World Rally Championship with the help of Sebastian Ogier. And then they had the Scirocco, which was sort of the odd one out. So Volkswagen did what they do best. Make a performance version. It was called the R. It was based on the Golf R, just as the normal Scirocco is based off the normal Golf, which meant it had 276 horsepower and 260 foot-pounds of torque. But there was one key difference between the Rs of the Golf and the Scirocco. The Golf was four-wheel drive, and the Scirocco was front-wheel drive. That meant it was more pure, I guess, if you're that type of person. The other people will simply say that it was slower, in just about every way. But still, it was the best Scirocco ever made. Sure, it was heavy at 3,100 pounds because of safety regulations and electronics and whatnot, but it had much better suspension and tires and chassis design. So, it was the best handling Scirocco ever, and on a pure grip level, it was rivaling the Golf R. But even a few touring car championship victories couldn't save the sales disaster that was the third-gen Scirocco. It somehow stuck around until 2017, when it was discontinued for good. And to be honest, as SUVs become a bigger and bigger share of the market, Volkswagen likely only has one slot available for hatchbacks. And if you're going based on brand recognition, the Golf will always be the top dog.